4, 5,
Heidi, here it comes.
6. I see Suzanne. 7, Cheryl. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And we are live.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and call this workshop of the Board of Education to order. It's 7:00 something. We'll go directly into our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance.
Sorry.
That was worth hearing twice, actually. I love that. It was a very enthusiastic pledge. So tonight we have a workshop, a work session on diversity recruitment. I wanted to just pause for one moment before we get into it. I saw today the President of the United States had a moment of recognition for the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre. And here in Connecticut, Governor Lamont did that as well. And I thought, since we are a city meeting happening tonight on the anniversary, we might just have a moment of silence. This was actually a suggestion that the mayor had as well, to recognize that anniversary. Thank you so much. So without further ado, it's great to be joining you live and in person. We're doing a hybrid meeting tonight. We have board members here in person at City Hall. We have board members joining us via Zoom. And we are working our way back into something that looks like normal. So I'm gonna kick it over to our superintendent, Dr. Estrella, to get our work session started.
So good evening, everyone. Today's workshop is going to be broken down into 2 components. One, it will be the HR audit that was conducted a few weeks ago, and presenting the findings from that audit that will help guide our work moving forward in terms of some of the things that we need to take into consideration as we continue to further develop and refine the needs within HR and ensure that the structures that we have in place will align with the priorities and goals that we want to set forward as a district. The second component of today's presentation is going to focus around the work that has started around diversity recruitment and retention, and provide some insight in some of the work that has already been initiated by the department to really support this process moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to the Prismatic team, and I will give them an opportunity to first introduce themselves and then take us through their presentation.
Okay, good evening. I'm Paul Tate, and I'm speaking to you from Greenville, Alabama. We're going to, with me is the president of Prismatic Services, Tasha Prieto, who will also participate in the discussions that are going on today.
And Paul, I will also be flipping slides for you. So I'm sharing the screen now. Everyone should be able to see the first slide.
Yes, thank you very much. We need to say, first off, how much support and how responsive Lisette Colon and her team were in providing for us and meeting our needs, not only from the inception of the review or audit, which actually began on February the 5th, whenever we signed the contract, and all the way through the on-site visit, the 5-day on-site visit. And I may say to Mr. Mayor of your fine city that we enjoyed the after duty activities that we participated in as well in your fine city.
Most people usually
gorgeous.
do.
Yes, beautiful, gorgeous city. We enjoyed it. And for me, it was a second springtime because it was, you know, in April when we were there and your spring was just coming on, and being in LA, which stands for Lower Alabama, we had been through a spring already. So it was great to say that I spent the spring in Norwalk, Connecticut. The presentation today we're going to go to this next slide. We're going to discuss with you the review process, the key elements that we reviewed, the kinds of activities that we performed in this review. We looked at how we were able to identify challenges. We found some very good things, and we'll talk about those in the commendations. Then we'll get to the findings and that we have prioritized them. And then in the end, we'll be able to speak to and field any of your questions. As we pointed out in the initiation project meeting that we had back in the 1st of March, on March the 2nd, I was the project director for this project. I completed 43 years in education before I became, in 2009, a consultant for Prismatic Services. And since then, I guarantee you, I have been much busier as a consultant than I was in the last 10 years of my professional career. And it has been a wonderful career. The last 10 years of my experience I was Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources for Mobile County Public School System, which is the largest public school system in the state of Alabama. Prior to returning to Alabama in 1999, I spent most of my career in Dallas, Texas, with Dallas Independent School District. And Dr. Prieto has been a consultant and in the consulting business for far too many years that we will care to enunciate, but she is well-versed, and it is a pleasure to work with her and to have her along for her assistance in this review.
All right, thank you, Paul.
So now I will give it to Tasha, who will talk about the review process.
Thank you, Paul. I'm actually talking to you guys tonight from Baltimore, Maryland. This is apparently the season for school board presentations. I have 6 this month. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the review process. This was one of the kinds of projects that Prismatic really likes to do. It's a highly collaborative process. There's no secrets, nothing held back as we go through the process with the district. In contrast to when we are contracted by the state to do reviews on school districts, that's a little less collaborative and a little less pleasant, quite frankly. So the general process is we initially make a request for a lot of data that is shared with us securely online. We review those data, begin to formulate questions, ask for clarification, start making all kinds of charts and graphs and things just to try to understand what's going on in the district. We fielded an online employee survey. Then we had a couple of e-conference sessions with HR leaders prior to going on site. Paul and I were both in the district on site in April. That was for interviews, focus groups, looking at records. In some cases, we did some employee observations, those kinds of things to get a sense of how things actually work for this school district. That's followed by development of preliminary issues. And that's where we put down everything that we think we see in terms of findings, good or bad, and what we think the recommendations are. Those are provided to, in this case, they were provided to the superintendent and HR leadership. and conversations ensued from that. And that led to some refinement of some of the things that we were thinking about. It led to some additional depth to some of the things that we were thinking about. And then that was followed by a written report with our findings, our recommendations, our commendations, and to try to help a fairly new department leadership out, we prioritized recommendations as well, which we thought should be tackled first, second, and third. The elements that we reviewed are all on the slide. These all correspond to what was requested in the RFP. And so we did look at all of these areas. There were a couple of areas where we had no findings. So I'll go ahead and say those up front. We didn't have any findings in compensation and benefits management. We did not have any findings in position control, and we did not have any findings in employee benefits. And what does that mean when we say that there are no findings? In those areas, there actually are recommendations, but it also means that it was working well enough that we didn't see the need for a recommendation. Are things perfect? Nothing is ever perfect anywhere, but in those areas, those were commendable, and we did not have any further recommendations for improvement. Specifics, putting some numbers to the work that we did for y'all. In collecting and analyzing documents, we requested and received 65 separate documents. Pretty sure, every time we put together that data request list, I feel certain the first thing the district goes is, oh my gosh, I can't, what are we getting into? But we can't do analysis work without data. And so the HR department staff was fantastic in providing us with data. And then they and other departments were fantastic in helping us understand some of the things that were provided, dive a little further in certain areas. We did a lot of that kind of work. We also analyzed publicly available data, and we pulled together data from some peer districts, not just within Connecticut, but in a couple of other states as well, and attempted to get districts that are the same size in terms of number of students and number of schools. We did an electronic survey that was available and open to all NPS employees. We provided it in 3 languages, and we received 585 responses. And then we analyzed those a couple different ways, actually. We provided some crosstab analysis, teachers versus other employees, and we certainly looked at it in multiple ways ourselves as we were developing recommendations. Our on-site visit included 35 in-person interviews and virtual interviews, as well as focus groups. We did do a few interviews after our on-site visit, as well as some follow-up emails and phone calls and Zoom interviews. And then we did benchmark you to other districts and also looked at industry benchmarks, both from Society for Human Resources Management, SHRM, as well as some other sources that are a little more K-12 centric, such as the Council of the Great City Schools. Paul's going to talk about some of the challenges we identified.
And a lot of these challenges you are already, as the board, are aware of, because Dr. Estrella has made you aware of them, I'm sure, already. We're flabbergasted at the high, as you probably are as well, at the high increase in employee health insurance. It's a necessity. We have to have it, and it's one of the prime benefits that we provide for our employees. So it's not much we can say about that. Plus, meeting the pay increases that are obligated by the union contracts is always a challenge. Getting the data together and analyzing it to look at needs in your strategic 5-year plan that you're working on is a challenge. We also, the high turnover, especially among teachers, is a problem. If we have difficulty attracting diverse candidates and we don't keep them, then, and if we don't hire them and keep them, then we are going to continue to have minus direction in regard to our diversity hiring. Always, it's a problem with every school district to fill the districts, especially before the first day of school. But the principals told us in focus groups that they were 100% fully staffed on the first instructional day for students, and that is a plus, plus, plus. moving toward electronic data management and operations. As we like to say in human resources, we want you to be paperless. We have started, Norwalk has started in that direction. It has run into some trials and tribulations, but they have the ability to overcome those, especially with collaboration with the Department of Finance. And we saw evidence of good collaboration between those two departments, and especially in moving towards electronic data management. The teachers told us, especially in the, well, employees as a whole told us in the employee survey that the responses that they got from human resources were of two kinds. Number one, no response. And number two, responding after it was far too late. So we have identified some areas to which we believe will ensure timely responses to employees and other stakeholders. Always there's a problem with staffing human resources offices with people who are experienced in school-based human resources. It's fine to have SHRM certified employees in human resources, and we all have them, but it does not replace the ability of human resources people to meet the needs of schools and school districts when it comes to recruiting and hiring, when it comes to employee benefits, when it comes to retirement and so forth. So, and then because of turnover in the Norwalk Human Resources Office, there is recent turnover. There is an incredible challenge of replacing those folks, and in the meantime, trying to operate efficiently and effectively with fewer people until the staffing needs can be met. And of course, increasing diversity of the teaching staff. And we always look for and appreciate if a human resources department has developed a comprehensive HR operational plan in which they have goals and objectives, measures by which they will meet those goals and objectives, and how they will be evaluated. Tasha spoke earlier of the accommodations, and we have highlighted 6 of them. It's incredible that you have a staff position for an HRIS person who functions and is on the staff in human resources information services. We knew before we came to Norwalk that the higher salaries of all of your employees compared to the region was certainly exceptional and wonderful to see and observe. We found an effective position control function. You're not overstaffed as far as we were able to discern because of the effective position control function that is provided to you by the Munis system. It's also unusual to find an in-house and an on-HR staff labor relations and legal counsel who sits on the staff of human resources. Generally in school districts where there are a lot of unions such as Norwalk, the in-house school board attorney also tries to do with his or her staff the negotiations that position requires. But you've got your own person now. We hope that he is now on board in your human resources department. As I said earlier, we saw excellent examples of HR collaboration with finance and payroll. The two must, of necessity, especially human resources and payroll, must be different because of essential checks and balances. But we saw some most recent collaboration and workflow processes and research studies being conducted jointly by both the Department of Finance and Payroll, as well as Human Resources. And although we're paying considerably for them, you have exceptionally good employee benefits, and the employees are satisfied with those employee benefits.
Can I just ask a quick question? Sorry to interrupt, Paul. And I apologize if I missed this earlier. Is there a color code to the way that these boxes are shaded?
No,
Okay.
not here. Yeah, they were just decorative in the prismatic feature.
Got it. They look very pretty.
Thanks to Tasha and her staff. And Tasha, we're now ready for the findings.
Do you want to cover this slide or do you want me to?
No, you can.
Okay, so I'm going to cover the findings. There were 22 recommendations made in this report. And, obviously, because this is a project that the district contracted for, it is up to the HR department and the superintendent and the district to decide what they want to implement and what they don't want to implement. We hope that we have provided sufficient reasoning in our report as to why we think these things are important to do. And then it's important to note that consulting reports are snapshots in time. And so this report is a snapshot of the HR department and Norwalk as of April. And we added a little bit to the report to include a status as of the end of May, based on some additional discussions with Lisette. However, the report itself is grounded in where the district was in April when we were there. And so because it's a collaborative process, we were asked to provide some prioritization to these recommendations. I think one of the overarching themes, and we talked with Lisette about this and other HR staff, is there's been some turnover in main positions within the HR department. And at the same time, we found a number of what we would consider to be foundational elements that were not there. And so we wanted to help provide, some prioritization for getting those foundational pieces in place. And so of the 22 recommendations, we classified 7 as a high priority, 9 as intermediate, and 6 as a low priority. And so the high priority ones are just the ones that we recommend you tackle first. So on this slide, because this is a collaborative process, and we've had a number of conversations with the superintendent, with Lisette, some other staff members within HR since we left the district, we shared our thoughts with the district and leadership while we were on site, and then again in the preliminary issues. And so it's not uncommon in a district that is seeking to improve, or the wording I use in my head is always on the move. We typically see that some of our recommendations are in the process of being implemented by the time we get to the reporting stage to the board. And that's a good sign. That's a sign that, you've got a group of leaders that are working hard, who, when they recognize a good recommendation, take the ball and run with it. In some cases, these were things that were already partially or somewhat or in process while we were there. We still would make a recommendation on those things, like the first one, continuing to develop rich HR content for the new website, because we don't want those activities to be lost. We don't want the board to take this report and go, okay, well, we're only focusing on what's in the report, and have some other good work that's going on in HR to be pushed to the wayside because of that. And so what you'll see on this, with our 7 high priority recommendations, 2 are actually already complete from the time we left in April until now. And those 2 are beginning the retraining of principals in their responsibilities for the Connecticut Team Program for new teachers. Some initial training has already taken place in that regard, and principals are being reacquainted or acquainted for the first time with their responsibilities in that program. The other one that has been completed since we were on site was adding an employment opportunity button to the opening page of the district website. And we're hopeful that with the redesign, the complete redesign of the HR or the whole website, that button continues to be on the front page. And I would suggest that we make it a little bigger and put it more towards the top. But we have completed this. 3 other recommendations that are in process from the high priority ones. One, continuing to develop rich HR content for the new website. I think, one of the things that was clear in talking with district leaders inside and outside the HR department is they understand the power of the website as a sales tool for recruiting. And I think that hopefully will come out abundantly when the new website is released, and you can see things in the HR area that really speak towards recruiting. I think I said it with a couple of interviews while I was there. This district pays some of the highest teacher salaries in the state. That ought to be the headline, on the HR website. Those kinds of things to help, ensure that we are recruiting, getting the highest quality candidates that we can. Two others that are in process among the high priority. We have an annual training requirement from the state regarding human trafficking, something we uncovered while we were on site, and the HR department is addressing that issue. Another one that's in process is increasing the speed in which recommended candidates receive offer letters. I think, we are all nationally seeing a contraction of in the numbers of people who want to enter the teaching profession. And you want to be positioned as the district that gets the best out of those teachers who are entering the profession and who want to teach. And, one of the ways that we lose teachers is if we don't get back to them quickly, especially new teachers who are, just coming out of college, need to land a job. They aren't particularly affiliated with any area yet, and so we need to be speedier on that. Now, this recommendation is in process. Since we were there on site, the HR department and the finance department have had some workflow conversations, talked about places where they can screw down on the time it takes to get from a recommendation to hire this teacher, from the principal to a recommendation to a letter or offer to the candidate. There's probably still some additional work to be done there, but the processing and the work around this recommendation have begun. Two high priority recommendations that haven't yet been implemented
Recomendaciones que no han sido implementadas todavía.
Is resuming the HR record digitization. That began a couple of years ago. The department paid a sum of money to an external firm to begin digitizing records. Priorities change, things happen in the school district. We have stopped that. We need to resume that process. One of the ways that we maintain trust with our employees is to have easily accessible records so that if I go in and I say, I want to see everything you have in the HR folder on me, I can easily be provided with that information. The other piece that plays into this and makes it more of a high priority, as we understand it, where the paper records are currently being stored may not be an option within about 6 months. So we're going to have to find a place for these records. The district, the state has some pretty stringent requirements for data retention in terms of how long you must maintain employee records that are actually a little lengthier than many of the other states we work in, but they do allow online records. And so we don't have to keep the paper, and we can digitize. Last high priority recommendation is one that we developed to help address the perception of the HR department within the district. There's been a fair amount of change within the HR department. Nothing we can do about that. There are some concerns that were stated in the survey. I don't necessarily get an answer when I call them. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why are you resorting to calling them? Oh, because you can't get answers online, there's no employee manual kind of thing. But one of the ways to begin to address the customer service perception is to include in the email signature of every employee in the HR department, a little quick link that anybody who gets an email from the HR department can click on to fill out to say, they were timely in their response. They gave me a complete answer. They were great, and begin to collect those statistics so that you can show that, yes, everyone who's interacting with us via email is satisfied with that interaction. We provided in the report a sample for how it's done in another district in a finance department. I'm going to flip to the intermediate priority recommendations. There are 9 in our.
Sasha, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Before we move on to intermediate, I wonder if we can just pause for a minute or two to see if board members had any questions about the high priority recommendations.
One question I have is which, if any, of the recommendations are directly in response to the identified challenge?
In response to the, I'm sorry?
The identified challenges. So understanding the recommendations you have going forward, are any of them meant to directly provide a resolution, as it relates to any improvement planning, or do any of the recommendations directly correlate with the identified challenge?
Several, yes. So including the customer surveys, that customer satisfaction survey link at the bottom of the employee signature block for your HR staff is a direct response to ensuring timely responses. We didn't have any data and weren't able to gather any data on how many phone calls a day each HR staff member is getting. How long is it taking each HR staff member to respond to a call? How about emails? Those kinds of questions. In focus groups, there was a lot of anecdotal given to us, but no quantifiable data. This would provide a way for you to measure customer satisfaction that could then be turned around into, employees may not have been entirely thrilled with how HR was operating last year, but 6 months from now, we have data to show that, emails are being answered timely and 97.5% of the people who sent an email or request responded positively to a confidential survey, that they're getting the results that they want. So that one directly correlates. The need to move to electronic data management and operations. First step in doing that is digitizing your HR records. So those definitely correlate. The high turnover among and filling district vacancies, that these respond to those, tangentially in a variety of different ways. And then I've got some more that respond directly in the intermediate and the lower priority ones. But I will say that we were asked to look at, the gamut of the 15 items in the RFP. And so some of these recommendations come from looking at those areas, but they weren't, as big of a challenge. They weren't big enough of a challenge to be included on the challenge slide or included in the executive summary as the biggest things that the department is challenged by. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Other questions?
I think the point about increasing the speed in which candidates get an offer letter is a really interesting point. I think it can have some very meaningful results. I'm just curious, can you quantify that? Like, what is a good speed, and what are we doing right now?
So Paul, you want to jump in and answer that one with your preferences?
Yes, the sooner the better. Whether it's 24 hours the next day or a day or so is traditional. In school districts where there's a lot of competition for fewer candidates, the quicker that you can get the person signed, the teacher especially, signed up and on board and accepting the offer, the better it is. We heard some principals say it was taking 5 to 7 to 9 to sometimes 2 weeks in focus groups before the individuals were getting an offer letter in Norwalk. We were not shared with the abilities to shorten that time that HR has been working on with finance and with in that workflow process. So I don't know what the new
I think I can answer
workflow process will be.
In conversation with Lisette about this specific recommendation, the workflow process work between HR and finance, they feel like they may have it down to 4 or 5 days. And then when Paul and I talked subsequent to that conversation, that's still a little bit long. I think that, you know, great teachers are hard to find, and you need to remove every barrier to grabbing the great ones that you can. And this would certainly be one of them. If I were a teacher out looking for a job and I got, you know, had 5 interviews, but, you know, one district got back to me within 24 hours and said, we love you so much, we want you. You know, I might not wait for the other districts to get back to me. You know, I think that speaks volumes about the beginning of the employer-employee relationship, to, you know, how quickly you get back to them and tell them, yes, I want you.
Can I just add in for a moment? What about the, you know, potential candidate, you know, it might be between 2 candidates and one that one actually gets the position. How are we responding back to the one that is not getting the position? Like, are we getting a letter out in a timely fashion for the candidate that might not be given that opportunity to work in Norwalk at that particular moment?
That I can't answer. Paul, did you collect any?
I can't answer that either.
Okay. I mean, I think that's something as we kind of go through this, you know, kind of looking at that a little bit further, because it could be candidates that we might not have a position for, but we might be able to get back at another time. So we want to keep that pool open for those great candidates that are looking for employment here.
So
I am confident that those,
I would just say I can speak
I'm confident that those who are not selected are communicated with. I'm confident of that. I just don't know that firsthand.
Okay.
I can speak, Heidi, to the pieces of the ones that are directly managed through my office in terms of like some of the central office roles. The minute that we make a decision not to offer a role, within a few hours of that decision, they receive a letter, an email stating that we have decided to move forward with a different candidate.
Okay.
So I just think that might be something we want to check is happening at the school level, because sometimes principals that was their responsibility and some did it better than others. Or it might be an HR function. So I think that may be something we should check on. I have a different question that might show up under a different priority. What do we do about increasing the speed of posting jobs that are needed? So if we know that there's going to be an opening in a spot, how quickly does that get up so we can in fact get the best candidates before they're already interviewing at other school systems?
I can speak to that in next slide.
Okay, then I'll hold my question. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Okay, I will move forward. Intermediate priority recommendations. There were 9 of those. And again, this is just our suggestions for the order in which these items are tackled, recognizing that the HR department does not have unlimited staffing. You know, we tried to put into the high priority ones, the ones that we felt were more critical and more foundational. Intermediate priority ones, you know, a little less foundational, a little less critical, or they depend upon getting some of the higher priority things begun before we can start with these. And again, as with the previous slide, 4 of the intermediate recommendations are already in process. And so one of the things that we found in Norwalk in April, no online employee handbook. And so the development of that has begun, which is a great thing. We did recommend that the district expedite the upgrade to the latest version of Munis and not wait for the tax collector if at all possible. There's a number of systems in play in the HR department, some of which are not Munis modules, some of which are Munis modules. We recommend that we go with one provider and not have to develop workarounds or patches between systems. Munis is a well-established ERP system. I used to say that, they all stink. It's just, you have to choose which smell you want. But the newest version of Munis actually, has some pretty robust capabilities and a new look and feel to it that I think will enable users to more quickly jump in and begin being productive with it. As part of one of your questions about posting positions, we also recommended that all HR department staff get training in Munis so that they're at least at the intermediate level with Munis. And that will begin to address your question about how quickly we can post vacancies. At the time we were there, the department only had one person who was Munis literate enough and empowered via permissions to be able to post vacancies. We don't think that is effective moving forward. Once all of your staff, all the HR staff are trained in Munis, they all should be able to post vacancies, because you're exactly right. When we have an opening, you want to shorten all the timeline that you can in the hiring process, because you don't want to have an opening for too long, because then work is not being done, or existing staff are taking on, a job and a half each in order to compensate for the empty position. And you want to have time for the thoughtful interviewing part that, may take several days to do, depending on how many candidates you're interviewing. And so shortening the timeline to posting is one of those pieces, and that will come with training in Munis. The other one that's in process already, I was the one that had the focus group with some of your school-based secretaries or paraprofessionals. We don't have any online manual that provides them with what are the official responses to a lot of frequently asked questions. But if you worked in school districts for any amount of time, you know that, yes, the principal is important. The school secretary holds that school together. And is often the de facto HR person for a lot of things. And we found that to be true within your school district, and want to have them have access to the correct answers. And then, and new answers as situations evolve in HR. So all four of those intermediate priority recommendations are already in process since we left the district. Other things that we need to work on. We do need to rewrite and update all the district-wide job descriptions and develop a process to keep those current. Probably, my least favorite activity in the HR world, but job descriptions are critical. It establishes the contract between the employer and the employee as to what we expect you to do. It is what the employer uses to hold the employee accountable when things aren't going as well as they had hoped they would. And it is what is posted when people are looking for jobs. And so as they go through that self-selection process to decide, is this the job for me? So that's important. We recommended instituting a formal structure and process for exit interviewing. This is something the district had several years ago. It sort of fell off the radar in the last couple of years. It's something that we need to bring back. One of the big struggles in K-12 generally, and in Norwalk is also struggling with the same thing, is, we lose a number of teachers after the first year, after the second year. We go through all of that trouble to find the greatest teachers on the planet, hire them, bring them in, and then we lose them after the first 1 or 2 years, and then after 5 years. And so bringing back exit interviewing for all positions to help us understand why people are leaving. If we like them enough to hire them, we should be interested in hearing why they're leaving. And sometimes, it is retirement. Sometimes it is, having a child and staying at home. Sometimes it is, my family is moving to another place. But there, even within the Norwalk data, there are a number of exits in the last couple of years that are probably due to them being unhappy with something. And we need to understand what that is. We recommended that the district formalize a non-certified performance evaluation system. Pieces of that existed, but we need to have as robust a performance evaluation system for non-certified as we do for certified. The teachers are often the main focus for school districts, but there's a whole lot of other non-teacher positions that go into making the school district great. And so we need to have a system that rewards performance in those areas. Then we recommended the adoption of industry standard HR efficiency and effectiveness metrics. In the report, we outlined a lot of the common ones that are used, and then we developed specifically for you all a table of what we think are probably the most important metrics for this HR department to focus on for the next 3 or 4 years. So those are outlined in there. And then finally, the ninth recommendation, creating a more diversified workforce. One of the goals of the HR department before we got there was increasing diversity, non-white employees, particularly in the teaching ranks. And we made some recommendations for specific steps that could be taken to support that effort, including specific requirements for having non-white staff on hiring committees, having established goals or explicit requirements for how many non-white applicants will be interviewed, assuming you have non-white applicants for positions, as well as a couple of other specific steps to take in there that should support the HR department in achieving a more diversified workforce and hopefully greatly exceeding it. But this is a recommendation that, given what's gone on in the country the last couple of years, many school districts are focused on creating a more diversified workforce. If Norwalk's going to win the game of being more diversified, the district will have to step up its recruiting and hiring practices in that area. Any questions on intermediate priority recommendations?
Yeah, can I add in? Let me just put my camera on. I apologize. A couple things I just wanted to go through as we're looking at this. I agree. These are intermediate priority recommendations that I would definitely recommend we can get done sooner than later. Producing an online employee handbook, I think, is really, really important, especially if employees have questions, they're not sure where to refer to or where to go to. If you have something online that they can easily access, I think would be really important. If possible, maybe to have a paper copy. I know how costly that could be, but at least to have something online. As well as the Institute of Formal Structure and Process for Exit Interviewing. I think you touched upon this a little bit, but I think we need to know as a district, what are we doing really well? What are we not doing really well? What can we improve on? What can we tweak a little bit? And you gave some great examples. It could be somebody moving. It could be somebody going back to school, whatever the reason may be, or it might be an individual that just isn't happy where they are. So I think it's telling for us to get that information. And it also helps us in the future for our future hiring. So I think that part, the exit interviewing, it's unfortunate we stopped that for whatever reason. I'm not sure, but I think it's something that we need to really look at again and really work on finding reasons why somebody might be leaving. Might be, for another position, whatever it may be. But if we have that data and we can look at that periodically, I think would really help us continue to grow as a district is really important. I think the manuals are key as well. And I think, formalizing the non-certified performance evaluation system, because we might tweak that along the way. That particular person's job position might change over time. It might look different now than it did 3 years ago. Or 3 years ago from now. So I think that's an ongoing document that we should look at as far as their position is and what their performance is as far as an evaluation. And I think everything else, creating a more diversified workforce, absolutely. And then metrics that we need to go by as a district is critical in continuing our success in Norwalk and attracting people to come to Norwalk. And something that I've mentioned as a board member over the years, we have a lot of our students that have gone on to earn teaching degrees and they're teaching elsewhere and are certified. We want to get those students back and we want to have a more diverse workforce, but we also at the same time, those students have gone on for an elementary certification or middle school or high school, getting those students back here to teach in Norwalk.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
I have 3 things I'd like to follow up on. Kudos on the district-wide job descriptions. I think some of them are probably from the 1960s or 70s. So those folks are doing nothing like what's on their paperwork. So that would be helpful to anyone who's supervising them. So if you're looking at a performance evaluation system that doesn't match the job description, that's obviously critical. I'm hoping that in your creating a more diversified workforce, there's some conversation about reaching out to HBCUs because we don't attract, our candidate pool is not as diverse as I think it should be for a city like Norwalk. Why don't Norwalk kids come back to Norwalk to want to get jobs? I think that's powerful. I hope that happens. And I'm going to push just a little bit harder again I understand having people in Munis and getting the jobs online, but I'm talking about when you recognize that you have for example, chemistry teacher who's retiring. How quickly and how can we make it quicker to get that job posted on CT Reap and on our website? Where is that just under Munis that will get fixed? That seemed to be a really ongoing complaint of how you got publicly on websites so people knew Norwalk had jobs.
I can provide. Go ahead, Paul.
A lot of school districts pay incentives to teachers who announce their retirement early so that immediately their position can be filled right away instead of having to wait for over the summer to come along.
I'm just going to interrupt like that. That does happen in Norwalk in some positions, but that doesn't mean it ever gets posted so anyone outside the school district knows. That's it. So my question is, does a training in Munis fix that, or is there something else that can make sure that we're the first people out there, that we're the first people that all candidates are seeing, especially diverse candidates? I do think there is somewhat of an incentive built in places for some positions anyway to put in for early retirement, but I find that it was always very difficult to get it posted in a timely fashion for anyone outside the school district to know about that.
And I just will make a couple points here. So on the first point, Suzanne, you brought up with the historically Black colleges, there was a big push in Connecticut to recruit that way. And it was a total disaster because these people would come, most of those schools are in the South. Those graduates would come here. They wouldn't know a soul. They wouldn't have any family members. They didn't like the climate. And they were kind of on their own. And the state has done a lot of work, and especially our local RESC.
Okay.
There's a woman there, Esther Bobowick, right?
She's retiring this year from CES, Esther?
Yeah, from CES. And she has done a ton of work on this. And they really realized that recruiting for historically Black colleges is not successful. Okay. And there's been a big push to help kids who are from here, who maybe, are going to UConn or one of the Connecticut state colleges, to help them get through not just their classes, but a lot of their certification. That's apparently where we lose a lot of these, especially prospective teachers. And there's been a big push also with some of our paras to get them into programs so that they can, and I think we even maybe were offering classes in City Hall to get some of these people certified. So I think they're really realizing that the traditional ways of doing this and of getting a more diverse staff were not working. And I know Esther's really pioneered a lot of this stuff. And some of it is grabbing kids as early as in high school, get them interested in teaching, and then providing supports throughout the whole system. Because apparently where we, those students that chose to go that path, where we really lose them is like when it comes to the praxis and some of those things, they have no support systems and they end up dropping out. So
do we have a teaching? Is one of our career pathways a teaching pathway?
I don't think we have one, but there's a program, I cannot think the name of it, that Esther was pioneering, and it needed a teeny bit amount of money from us. And I don't think we ever partook in it that I recall, but I know there are some avenues, and I would think as part of this effort, this is something, we could partake on. And I know I had Esther come and speak to the board once upon, I don't know, must be 3 or 4 years ago, to talk about some of these programs, and maybe we want to have her back or engage with her, because she really, they've vetted a lot of things, and I think they've realized what works and doesn't work. On the job postings, I forget what that system is called that we post in. Frontline? Oh, Apple Track. That's really where the disconnect is, Suzanne. I know, you need a position, and I don't know if it has to go through Munis so that we know we have the funding for it so then it can be posted. But I think there is a big lag on Apple Track. And I think also a lot of people get pissed off because they'll post an application, and historically, I think it's changed now, but historically, we never even acknowledge receipt of their application. And we never actually notified them that we're not going to interview them, or they don't have the right qualifications or whatever. So I do think that is an area I think we've improved on, but I know we were really, really bad in the days when you were a principal. We were the worst, just because we never even acknowledged these applicants, and you ended up alienating people.
And I think one of the conversations we had with Prismatic is really looking at Munis. The mayor and I have started conversations about upgrading the current version that we have, because a lot of the things that you're talking about, Mike and Suzanne, can easily be addressed with the newer versions of Munis, because it will expedite the process more fluidly than we currently have it now. Because different systems need to communicate, and because we don't have the latest software, it makes it challenging for us to expedite things at the rate we want to. Once we have the latest version of Munis, a lot of the processes that need to take place to make the turnaround quicker will be more expeditious. But because we have two systems that don't always effectively communicate with one another, it makes it very challenging to do. So that's why one of the reasons why I believe Prismatic is recommending the upgrades, because with the upgrades, we will be able to do that.
And go ahead, sorry.
And I think to the point in terms of the job descriptions, we have already started a lot of that, even with the reorganization, like restructuring and reorganization of central office. All of those job postings were revised, updated, and modified. And we already started conversations about the evaluation system that we need to establish across the board, because right now we have principals, teachers, and some central office personnel that have a systemic way of being evaluated and obtaining feedback to improve. But that is not across all disciplines, and it's something that we really need to modify, because everybody should be held accountable to the same standard, not just certain components of the organization. So that's something we're also looking into as well.
Oh, and I should mention, and Suzanne was kind of indirectly, for people to retire early, we do have a system. The sooner you notify you're going to retire, this is for teachers. I don't know if it's for non-certified staff. You get to keep more of your untaken vacation if you notify us earlier. I forget the cutoffs. One's like October 1, one's like March 1, right? And then you can keep more of your vacation time. You get a higher payout if you notify us earlier. But I think that's only maybe certified teachers or certified staff.
I think I could add just one piece to it. One of the challenges that the department will need to face in terms of the speed to post, moving away from AppleTrack and into the modules that Munis has for human capital management will certainly help. I think that there are some workflow pieces in terms of, as you said, ensuring that we acknowledge that we've received applications from candidates is an important piece to keeping them interested in you. The other thing that will need to be addressed, and I know that there have been some discussions between the HR and the finance department about this, but when can we post? If I know that chemistry teacher is going to retire, can I post now in May for a position that will be available in September? And that's a fairly easy answer question. What about a position that in January that I know is going to be available in March? And that has to do with, how we as a district accept that I am going to have the budget for this position. And it is better to start the hiring process earlier rather than waiting for it to be vacated. That's a challenge that is an HR and finance discussion. I know that some conversations have been had about that. I don't know that we're quite finished with that piece, but that'll be part of it.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have a couple questions actually. You didn't touch upon SPED hiring, where there is a significant teacher shortage in the state of Connecticut and nationally. Any nuances to your recommendation specific to SPED?
In terms of creating a more diversified workforce, no. I do think I could add to the conversation. Paul and I just finished our getting our DEI certification from University of South Florida a couple of weeks ago. And I think that, one of the things that we would encourage the district to consider is, an upfront, spoken and an actual commitment to, hiring diversity. I made the comment to, I forget it, maybe the superintendent, when we were there, coming from the outside, you don't normally think of a district in Connecticut as being highly diverse in terms of student body. And I think that it needs to be part of the conversation in terms of hiring. We want to hire teachers who look like our students as an explicit statement. And then backing that up with the research that shows that diverse organizations are stronger organizations. In the for-profit world, diverse organizations are more profitable. Making a commitment that is acknowledged and out there, I think will help you, find the diverse candidates who, are not at the HBCUs, who are at the local community colleges or at the local colleges and universities or in the area. Creating the image of this district as a place that values and celebrates diversity among its students and its staff is probably part of the marketing in the recruitment materials that we need. As far as the SPED specific shortage is nationwide and probably only going to get worse. And so to that end, I think that Paul may disagree with me on this, but we have to start looking at budgeting to hire people when we find them versus when we actually have the need. And so the example would be teachers retiring at the end of January. And it's now October, but I found a great candidate. And if I tell that person, I love you, I want you to come take this job at the end of January, it's October, they'll be gone by then. They will take another job. And this is beyond Norwalk. This is a K-12 problem. We need to grab the good people when we can find them and hold on to them. And that's not something that most K-12 budgets are built for. But as the hiring shortage is exacerbated in K-12, it's going to be something that we're going to have to start doing. It's part of private business practice already in a lot of ways. We don't wait for person A to absolutely exit, have their cake and leave before person B starts. We usually plan for overlap. We usually plan for onboarding process, recognizing that a new employee is not going to be as effective as a seasoned employee. We usually plan for the outgoing employee to have some time with the incoming employee. Those are not traditionally K-12 approaches to hiring, but I do think it's something that ought to be on the table because if you only wait to hire until the position is currently open or going to be open in 2 weeks, you're usually losing out on great candidates. Paul, did you want to add to that?
No, I agree with you 100%. Nationally, there's a lot of pushback about what if this teacher who announced that she was retiring in October decides that she can't retire or it's not profitable for her to retire and she stays on. Well, then you've already hired her replacement as a chemistry teacher. Well, you've got a returning chemistry teacher plus one. School districts have to budget additional positions to account for the teaching vacancies that are hard to fill so that they can hire them as soon as they find them, like a slush fund of 50 additional positions. And say that school opens and we've got 50 teachers with no classrooms, then you can, school boards go bananas over this kind of planning, but at least we've got a certified good teacher in front of our students.
And I think just to piggyback on that, I mean, most industries, don't try to staff, exactly. It's the equivalent for just-in-time supply and demand, supply chain that we've all just experienced the negative effect of. When you screw down the supply chain so much so that, a little disruption in some, far off country means that there are no computer chips for the automobile production line for Chevrolet, and they stop producing cars. It's the same kind of idea. We have to get used to the idea of we might have a few extra positions, teachers on deck. And this would be particularly helpful because, the research shows that, why do you lose new teachers? There's a small percentage of teachers that come into teaching that, somehow manage to get through their undergraduate and their certification process without really knowing what it's going to be like in the classroom. And they get there and we probably can't keep them. But there are a large percentage of the teachers, don't feel that they're supported. And there's not enough mentorship available. There's no easing them into the process. Oftentimes what school districts do, the teaching load of a brand new year zero teacher is the same teaching load as that teacher with 20 years. And from one side you could say, well, they're both teachers, we should have the same expectations. But, realistically, that brand new teacher, would probably really benefit by having a year or a half a year where their teaching load was less than that of the other teachers, so that they could begin to grasp their job and learn their craft. And we don't do enough of that. And so I think that, as the hiring process hiring situation becomes more dire, we're not producing nearly enough teachers to fill the vacancies. We have to look at other ways. And I think one of the things that was a positive when we were there was in meeting with the focus group with your paraeducators, you are getting paraeducators who come from diverse and educated backgrounds, college degrees already, or, half of a college degree completed, other experiences in professional environments, who do express interest in becoming teachers. And those are probably your greatest source for new teachers because they're already living in your community. They're already working in your schools. They know what the job is going to be like. Promoting them forward is a great place to start.
Thank you. And my second question was, I was surprised that best practices in the interview committees for teachers didn't come up. I've heard there's a lot of inconsistency in the district of who we're selecting to do those interview processes at a school-based level. Did that come up?
Actually, it's on the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Let me flip to the next slide.
Okay, I apologize.
All right, last 6 recommendations, lower priority, but again, just trying to give you all someplace to start and with the ones that we felt were most critical. 6 recommendations here. There are ones that can wait a bit or that depend upon the implementation of other recommendations first. And so we've got one recommendation that was already in process. Improving the HR web pages. At the time we were there, the district was undertaking a massive redesign of its website. Saw lots of good structural bones for how we were going to approach what's on the website, and we think things are in good shape there. One of the things that internal content, internal HR content may end up being on a share file system or may end up being on an intranet site. But we felt confident that things are moving in the right direction there. To your point about interviewing and hiring practices, we did recommend here that the HR department take the lead in developing packages of training for principals and administrators on 2 areas. One is interviewing and hiring practices, and to which we strongly recommend that include ensuring that you have diversity at the table, both on the side of the people doing the interviewing and on the side of the interviewees, ensuring that we are interviewing a diverse group of people for each position. We are also recommending training packages for principals and administrators on employee management and discipline practices. We need more consistency in both of those areas and ensuring that we're doing it the Norwalk way, that is both in accordance with the law and in accordance with your goals. So those 2 things are part of the recommendations. Other lower priority recommendations, the top one here, preparing work instructions or user manuals for each major responsibility in each HR position. I often call those desk procedures. They are, I can't decide which I dislike the most in terms of the grind. Job descriptions or desk procedures, both are incredibly important. But desk procedures, are specifically written instructions for every major job function, so that somebody could pick it up and use the manual to complete the functions if that person had to leave. The department has had a fair amount of turnover. Really hopeful that the new group and it settles in and is there for 20 years each, but that may not be the case. Also, developing desk procedures usually ferrets out, little tiny niggly inefficiencies that we can make incremental improvements on processes as we go through that. Last two areas, establishing an employee appreciation and recognition program with the communications department. There's some pieces to that in place in terms of announcing new employees in the newsletters, but a larger employee appreciation and recognition program is what we're recommending. And then finally, replacing ASOP. ASOP is what you're using to find teacher substitutes. What we're recommending is we either roll out ASOP with other groups, such as finding a substitutes for custodians or and reporting your leave, because right now there's a lot of paper-based processes around reporting leave if you're not a teacher. But since we're making progress in moving forward with the Munis upgrade, we're recommending that you switch to the school ready site or school ready module within Munis. Assuming that they can provide some guarantees that it works well with the other Munis modules. The background on that is Ready Sub, sorry. The background on that is Tyler Technologies acquired that company. So there's probably some internal configurations that are going on now. But we think that that's probably a better move for you than continuing with ASOP, since it does not seamlessly tie with Munis. Any questions on those? And then we just had one last slide. Somebody asked about the demographics of the survey. Wanted to provide this to you in this environment. So you can see mostly it was classroom teachers, but we did get some decent representation from all the other roles in the school district, and had good representation across the length of employment time, which always makes me happy to see, particularly getting the input from those people who've been there 20 plus years. And with that, any further questions? Anything that we need to discuss further?
Just going into the survey demographics, we certainly got about 600 responses from about 2,000 employees. Is that ratio, is that typical? Is that less than you usually see? Is it more? Do you think there are factors that determined whether we could have gotten more or less?
I think that single subject surveys like this, when we do comprehensive reviews and we're looking at everything in the school district, we tend to get a little higher response rates. Single subject ones don't tend to get as much input. I also see that in the last year and a half, every client we've had has been surveying people about things that they haven't been surveying about before. How do you feel about remote learning? How do you feel about coming back from remote learning? And so there's a fair amount of survey fatigue in K-12 in general. And so I wouldn't say that, obviously I'd like everybody to always answer every survey, but these results are not bad. They were enough for us to work with, especially since we did get a good breakdown in terms of different roles and length of employment in the district. We did not get as many within the other languages. We only had about a handful that responded in Spanish. We didn't get any results in Haitian Creole. That was a little disappointing. But I think that just probably means that the people that wanted to participate felt comfortable enough in English in order to respond in English by and large. We did get a volume of input to the questions, how could the HR department be improved and those kinds of things. So I think we got very thoughtful input overall. But this kind of a survey rate for this kind of a survey is about on course, maybe a tad bit lower, which I attribute almost all of it to COVID and survey fatigue, and nobody wants to be online any longer than they have to be in a lot of respects.
Thank you.
I just
A
have a
more
comment.
comprehensive results of the employee survey is included in an addenda to the report. It's
Breakdown
kinds
of
of
all
that
the-
were asked and so forth.
Yes.
The comment I just wanted to share was, not dismissing, where we have to grow and where your priority recommendations are, but understanding what the HR department looked like at the time you took the snapshot, seeing testament to some of the hard work that Lisette is doing and it has been doing, I think should be noted. Just given where we are and kind of where we ended at the end of April, and then you coming back to us at the end of May. I think it is testament to just a lot of some of the turnaround that Lisette has been integral in. I just want to take note to appreciate you for that.
Yes, and I will say that I'm pretty sure I said this in the conversation, one of the conversations with Lisette. I mean, from one perspective, the school district's been around for more than 100 years. And, you have expectations of, a company that's been around for more than 100 years, that some foundational elements will be pretty well cemented. And in large part, in the HR part of the district, a lot of those foundational elements simply aren't there, to the point where I asked one interviewee, there's some sort of a shared drive that got lost in the last couple of years. And so, to which the answer was no. So there's, make no bones about it. There are foundational things that need to be done in the HR department that, it's where we are. And yes, a lot of things are happening at once in the HR department, which is fantastic.
In fact, the week that we were there were two employees HR employees who left the district. One was through retirement, and the other one was a temporary, incredibly good employee benefits person who was returning to her home after working in a temporary slot. So we've often heard analogies of flying the airplane before it is completely constructed. But it was similar to that. We were evaluating and assessing functions and operations in a department that was growing of necessity because of turnover. So it was difficult for the staff persons for us to be there at a time of this turnover, but we hope that we were able to provide some insight into the fundamental kinds of things that needed to be done.
Thank you. And I just had a couple of quick follow-ups on some of the recommendations. I have some questions I wrote down. When we're talking about the intermediate priority recommendations and rewriting the position descriptions, is that something you recommend as part of a union negotiation, or is that something that happens separately from the union?
Separately. It's separately from the union. If you're not fundamentally changing a person's job or a job title, then generally the union would have no difficulty with a new job description.
Yeah, in general. And then going back to the online employee handbook, just to be clear, are we talking about taking an existing handbook and digitizing it, or are you recommending the creation of something new and different? Okay.
There is we were not provided a copy of an existing employee handbook, either in print or online. Yeah. So this will be a creation from an original. A
Yeah,
lot
you weren't thinking about
of
the airplane.
Those elements.
yeah, a lot of the pushback comes from, well, the provisions are already within the union contract, but if you don't know how to access the union contract online, then and you don't know necessarily which union contract to consult with, the employee handbook will fit all the provisions of all of the contracts of all the unions. It's a one-stop shop for all employees, regardless of their union affiliation.
And that would help the differences that we hear happens from school to school, because principals, because they had no employee handbook, would always be doing the best thing they thought they could do. Because there was no one to do it, they developed their own. So when you hear about discrepancies between schools, that was created because there was a void that had to be filled, and folks stepped up and did it. So this is a powerful tool to Dr. Estrada's one of her overall strategic goals of stopping that inconsistency school to school and across the district. That'll be really helpful.
Mhm.
And then I wanted to follow up on the idea of creating a more diversified workforce. I'm just curious if you made any observations or have recommendations about diversity that are separate from race, for example, gender or sexual orientation or age or anything else.
So the HR department's goal includes a diversity based on race. I think, that subsumed under that is, increasing diversity overall. We have to figure out how to effectively do that as a district. I don't know that we have a problem gender-wise. I don't remember the stats for female versus male, unless you're making the case that we need more male teachers, because I think we're overrepresented in females, as we are in K-12 pretty much everywhere. But I think that the recommendations that we make in the report, could be applied to any diversity direction you want to go. Ensuring that there's representation at the table in the hiring process. We recommended that you consider, for example, something I haven't mentioned before, consider anonymous resume review. There's good research out there that says that, the name of the person at the top of the resume, may subtly influence that person doing the hiring to accept or reject that resume. That would be a huge change in how you operate, but something to consider. I think that advertising that you are embracing diversity in all of its forms will go a long way towards finding those like-minded individuals who want to be part of a diverse community. And I would not be shy about saying that as a school district, because the research is well founded at this point that diverse organizations are stronger in a lot of ways. But I think that the tools that we recommend can be applied across. Our specific focus was on race, because we have a pretty strong discrepancy between the race ethnic composition of your students and the person at the front of the classroom. And we felt like that was probably the best place to start.
Thank you. I have one more question, sorry. When you talk about benchmarking some of your findings against other Connecticut districts, what specific districts did you look at?
Paul, do you have the report in front of you?
No, but I can get it.
Okay. We asked for, we asked district leadership for peers that they thought, admired or thought were similar. and included some of those. Most of our work in looking at peers was looking at organizational structure within the HR department. And because that was one of the key questions that we were asked. We ultimately did not have a recommendation on modifying the structure, but that was a chunk of the work that we did. You want to run through the peers?
Yeah, as soon as I can locate it.
If I can stop sharing, I can flip to it. Let's see. Okay.
The school district peers in Connecticut were Danbury, Fairfield, Greenwich, Meriden, New Britain, and West Hartford. The school district's peers in other states were Acton, Agua, Dulce, Unified in California, Central Dauphin in Pennsylvania, Cicero in Illinois, Duncanville Independent School District in Texas, and East Central Independent School District in San Antonio, Texas.
Thank you. What questions I have?
Any other questions?
This may not be a fair question to ask, understanding, it's already very helpful to have, high, intermediate, and low priority recommendations, but, and understanding that many of these recommendations are a process of continuous improvement and are never quote unquote done. If I were to ask you, like, under the high priority, like what are the top 3 things? Do you have those identified, or is that something, it's not a fair question?
I can pick one, and then Paul, maybe you want to pick one. I think the rich HR content for the website, it is how you advertise for positions can be make or break in terms of whether or not you get good applicants. And just for example, I flip through a lot of school district websites and go to a lot of employment sections. And if I can't, as a potential applicant, pretty quickly find out, well, how well do you guys pay in comparison to other districts? I mean, these are the questions I have as a potential employee. If, I click on something and I get a job description that says, well, this is in, salary category 423, refer to the union contract. Unless I have another reason to want to apply to that district, I'm out of there. I think that developing the HR piece that on the website that is a solid recruiting tool that says, why you should work here. We embrace diversity. We have a diversity in our classrooms. We one of the highest paying, if not the highest paying in the state. We have these kinds of supports for new teachers. We have these kinds of supports for paraeducators who want to grow up and be educators. I think, those are all incredibly valuable pieces towards getting the best employees that you can. And in this day and age, that pretty much always starts on the website. So I would pick that one first. Paul, do you have one favorite?
And yes, I have one, is the increase the speed at which recommended candidates receive offer letters. That seems to be already well underway in process through collaboration between Lisette and Tom. But that would be a high priority for me. And then the third one would be to resume the HR record digitization. It's so important to reduce to electronic format all of the records that are in the storage, not only student records, but human resources, personnel records.
And to piggyback on that, one thing that we didn't talk about before as part of that digitization, as the district works forward through that digitization, one of the things that came up as a potential concern is, is everything we have in Munis completely accurate? Does that teacher have a master's degree plus, 10 years of teaching experience? All of those kinds of questions. As you digitize and analyze those records in comparison to Munis, we are probably going to find at least a few mistakes. And so going through that and working through that at the individual employee level will be important.
Great. Well, I think it's a very in-depth presentation. I look forward to reading more of the actual report. If there's any other final questions, comments? Once, twice? Great.
Well, I want to thank Prismatic for supporting us through this process and really helping us assess the state of our HR department that will inform our continuous improvement efforts as we plan forward the strategic plan. So thank you to the work that you engaged in and the productivity of what that will allow us to do moving forward. The last component of today's presentation is just providing an update to the board around the diversity and retention marketing plan that Lisa Colon and her team have been working towards.
Okay,
great, perfect, even better. Good evening, board members and superintendent, through you, superintendent. I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for this, for us to be able to present to you about our new recruitment plan. First time, first year, and under the superintendent's leadership and administration. Let me take my glasses off because they're getting foggy. It's a very exciting and robust marketing campaign, recruitment campaign for the Norwalk Public School District, and we hope that you enjoy it. So with that said, we could just kick it off to the second slide and speak to that. Does everyone have a copy or do you need a copy? Okay, perfect, okay. So what you have in front of you is what started with the 2019-2020 recruiting efforts that were in the district. And the district had partnered with CES, it was mentioned before. They started a relay program, which is still in existence. It's been curtailed a bit, but it's still in place. And the Association of the Montessori International Program. That's also, there were 2 hires that were made for the district for that particular program. That's in place. We could go on to the next slide. I'm sure everybody's tired of want to get somewhere. Our active recruitment sources from 2019 to 2020, you can see the difference, how we've increased our efforts, and without having to go through all of them, pretty self-explanatory. We've created different channels, such as LinkedIn Handshake, which is a platform that connects with different universities and colleges and actually outside organizations. We have a Centro Hispano, which is also connected to us. We did the virtual and on-site job fairs, and we're still connected with CES and CT.gov. We have new college partners. We have our marketing campaign, which we're very proud of, and you're going to get to see more of that as we go through the slides. We also have top applicant sources, as you can see, those are listed there. And very happy to report that our Norwalk Public School website gets the most hits. It's probably our number 2, and that's because we've been marketing our district Appletrack address on everything that we put out to the public. And then there's the other miscellaneous. One of the things that we also started that did not exist in the district is the New Beginnings, New Hire Orientation, and that's done every week on a weekly basis, because we strongly believe that the way you onboard and process someone and welcome them into the district is what's going to determine their retention and how long they're going to stay with the district. So we try to make it all that as welcoming and as warm as possible. And we also provide them with the tools and resources that they need to hit the ground running when they reach the classroom. We started off by doing 3 hours in the morning But now that's increased to a full day for the certified staff because they get to be exposed to the 40 modules that they need to understand and be familiar with. And also in partnership and collaboration with the IT department, they provide devices, the username and password. If there are any kinks that need to be worked out, everything is done prior to them hitting that classroom. Okay, on to the next slide.
Sorry, can we ask questions as we go along?
Oh, sure, whatever you're comfortable with.
Just looking at one of the new recruitment channels, that's always going out. I'm just curious, are we recruiting primarily in English, or are we using Spanish language recruitment as well?
We're doing both.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Any other questions on that one? Okay. Ralph, I'm sorry. Okay, our next slide will give you an overview quickly of all the different channels that we're utilizing for marketing and recruiting. Pretty self-explanatory, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to respond. And you're going to see more of this in motion as we get through, that we're not stuck on one slide. 2 more slides, Ralph. Yeah, the billboard. There you go. So this is an example. I don't know how many of you have seen this on 95. We got great reviews. We actually, this was very exciting for all of us. We got some feedback from some administrators and teachers saying they felt a sense of pride when they saw this, like, yes, Norwalk is, there's a headlight on us, there's a spotlight. And one of the things that we provoked is competition. Other districts started to say, wait a minute. And so they started to create online videos, which I shared with the superintendent, and some other things. So it's on, the competition is on, and it's fierce. Next slide. Our Metro bin locations, this was the first marketing tool that we used, and it's been working lovely. It's got a QR code, which is nice. As you know, those QR codes help if people want to get right to the location, to the website, just by putting their camera in front of it. And as I mentioned, there's 5 different locations throughout the city. And it's working very well. We're proud of this as well. And this was in collaboration with our communications department. Next slide. We also became members with LinkedIn. We have a 3-year contract with LinkedIn, and our numbers keep increasing. Last time we had checked was 357, then 297. Now we're up another 100. So we're getting there, and our goal is to be way over past 5,000. So if you're not, if you haven't joined, we ask you to please join. Go on your social media now and please just follow us. That would be great. And as you see our postings go up, you can share with your own networks. Next slide.
Anecdotally, like, is LinkedIn more popular than Indeed? It is.
It's
They're owned
more
by
of a
the same
social
people.
networking,
Yeah.
so because of it being a networking, it is more popular. It
Yeah.
is one of the biggest
Yeah.
social media platforms.
And it's almost like interactive. They pick up on what we put out there, and they just continue to highlight it and promote it, which is really nice. This is something that's going to be released. Superintendent has actually gave the thumbs up today. And so pretty soon you're going to see a beautiful brochure that's going to really not just focus on the district, the school district, but the city as a whole. So it's very, very nice. And it pretty much speaks out with why you should come to Norwalk and why you should be a part of the Norwalk school family. So
Can I say one thing about this?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Lisanne and I were talking about is the possibility of creating a session, and like we need your help on this one, where we can have a fair that not only highlights what Norwalk Public Schools has to offer, but also have realtors and have the mayor and other council members present, so they can get a feel for the city, but also know like how to access like real estate and other community
And amenities.
resources if they decide to come to Norwalk and teach here. They also understand what is available and what living life, lifestyle and living expenses look like and feel like here. So that as we're recruiting, we're also providing them all of the essential resources to come and move to Norwalk if they want to.
Well, it's really interesting because I'm a certified teacher and I can't teach in Norwalk, obviously, because I'm on the board. But it was interesting when they were presenting, and it's true because I could kind of live anywhere, right? I don't, my kids have grown up, so I could go teach wherever I thought was interesting. And you go to certain of these school websites, you can find out the comp, the whole thing right away. Other districts, you can't find anything. And it you know, if you're whatever, I'm going to be picky about where I'm going to go teach. And so I'll look and, you know, you kind of cherry pick. And sure enough, if a district doesn't have the information there, they're like, they don't really care. I'm not even going to bother. So I saw you had on that list, CT REAP. And that's one of my favorite. I mean, that's where I get most of my leads from.
CT REAP is what the universities and colleges tell their students to apply to and go to. So that's the first source, because that's what they've been told and been trained to.
And it's a good, I think it's a national platform maybe or something.
For Connecticut, it's definitely Connecticut.
I think other states use a similar platform. And so it's really well designed. You can find the stuff there where everything is. They have these flashes. It's a good site.
Yeah. This brochure will also be on our website once it's gonna be, listen, I'm going to milk it.
Okay, good.
I wanna make sure that it gets way out of Norwalk. It's not just the website, we'll have conversations about it. During dinner, during whether social or not, or it's just gonna be the center and the focus point. Because there's gonna be a lot of great information in there.
I imagine if there's a digital copy online, it can be a little dynamic and be updated more quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, next slide. We also decided to advertise at diners, their placemats where you sit. You know how you look at different advertisements? We're there, and these are the different 5 locations where we decided to promote. So we're trying to cover not just within Connecticut, but also tri-state, and you'll see more of that as we move forward. Some of the things that and you'll see, that's why you received the bags today, and you have those little, nice branding items to keep promoting, right? You using the face mask, you have Norwalk Public Schools, and they're all useful. They're not dust collectors, and that's the great thing about it. And so we hope you enjoy those, and thank you for the support. Next slide. Okay, and here we are. So we have our first advertisement in Spanish, and it's covered all these areas that you see here. Go ahead.
Las escuelas públicas de Norwalk están buscando maestros calificados para todas las escuelas. En particular, se necesitan maestros en las áreas temáticas de escasez de matemática, educación bilingüe, especial, ciencia y literatura. Si tiene una certificación de otro estado, llame al Departamento de Educación del Estado de Connecticut para comenzar el proceso de certificación. Para solicitar o para obtener más información, visita norwalkps.org. Aplica ahora o llame al 203-854-4024. Las escuelas públicas de Norwalk, trabajando juntas para elevar el listón y cerrar la brecha.
Next slide.
Las escuelas públicas de Norwalk están buscando más.
Ralph's working on his fan.
We know you like that one. 99. Here's 99.
Norwalk Public Schools is the place to be. And if you're looking to teach or become a paraeducator, now is the time to join the #1 rated urban school district for 3 years running. Norwalk Public Schools is looking for teachers and paras at all grade levels. If you're looking to be a contributing team member in a top district, Norwalk Public Schools wants to hear from you. Being bilingual is a plus. Apply now at norwalkps.org by clicking on Employment Opportunities and completing a pre-employment application. That's norwalkps.org. Norwalk Public.
And here's our hot one. 97.
Norwalk Public Schools is the place to be if you are looking to teach or become a peer educator. Now is the time to join the #1 rated urban school district for 3 years running. Norwalk Public School is looking for teachers and paraprofessionals at all grade levels. If you are looking to become an impactful team member in a top school district, Norwalk Public Schools wants to hear from you. Being bilingual is a plus. Apply now at norwalkps.org. Click on Employment Opportunities and complete a pre-employment application. That's norwalkps.org. Norwalk.
Are these running in the tri-state area?
Yes, yes. WPKN is a community radio, and it's listened to by over 1 million. There are over 1 million listeners, and they go live stream. So there are people even in Spain that listen to it, and there's different programs. And we've been they've supported us in advertising and promoting the things that we're doing in Norwalk, not just jobs, but just the great work that the superintendent's doing. So it's been a great help. The percentage of certified minority employees, I wanted to share this with you as a bonus, an added bonus, and we highlighted the areas under the state of Connecticut. If you notice to the left, under the 2019, I have to put my glasses on. Under 2019, the percentage from the state of Connecticut, and then there's Norwalk Public Schools. I want you to, because I know that I keep hearing we need to increase diversity. Well, I think we're doing phenomenal in comparison to the state average. The percentage, 9.6 across the state. Back in 1920, Norwalk Public Schools was at 17.5. We said to ourselves, let's not kill ourselves. If it's that difficult, let's go on a 1%, in over 5-year period, be up by 5%. We superseded that already, and we're so proud of that. And the school year is not even over. And considering all the moving targets and all the moving elements, it's great news, and we should be proud of that. And we should really celebrate that. And if we're there now at 19.5, we're at 2%, look at the numbers going, we're gonna go way past that 5% in the next years to come. So this is a great opportunity. I have to say thank you. I can't thank you enough because a lot of this is not known, or you can't see it unless you talk about it. And so I hope that it's helpful, and we'll continue to provide you numbers as we continue to move forward. Next slide. Weekly communication of vacancies. These are the different other platforms that we're using. And we mentioned LinkedIn, Handshake, the college university partners, whether local and even out of state. We've made some progress there. And also the new hire orientation announcements. Next slide. Upcoming partnerships. Pretty self-explanatory. I know that in the past there was some question about having a virtual job fair and on-site job fair. So just know that it's on our radar and it's up and coming. And we're also cognizant, front and center, keeping the focus on retention and recognizing all the hard work under extenuating circumstances. We keep forgetting that, the pandemic's not over. We worked through a pandemic. And so taking the opportunity and the time to say thank you, not just to educators, but to principals and even non-certified staff. We had our custodial staff, and thanks to the superintendent, we were able to, during the storm, the custodial staff did a phenomenal job, and there were pizzas that were delivered to them. The little things like that, that for us, for some people it's like, but it goes a long way and it means a lot. The message was great. And so there's a video, we won't, because of, you can go in there, it's on our website, right? You can, it's on LinkedIn as well, and you can click on that to see, and that was again, with collaboration with the communications department that was put together. So thank you. I hope it wasn't too fast. I know because of the sake of time, people want to get home. I just kind of went through that. Any questions so far?
Could you remind me again, what happens after you complete a pre-employment application? I know that's not the complete application, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the difference is and just how that has helped increase recruitment, how that impacts it?
Yolanda?
Yeah, so the pre-employment application is more of the history of education, work experience. And then once the individual is extended an offer, then there's more verification process, but the application does need to be completed while submitting application for employment to a particular job. So there are, a bunch of different questions that's asked, certifications. So it's more of, it's not a pre-employment, it's an actual application. It's a complete application. The pre-employment is more on the screening piece. So the application is used for that pre-employment screening, that dialogue, whether it's a phone screen or a Zoom screen. But the application is a complete application that candidates do submit.
And it feeds into the AppleTrack system?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So what I hear you saying pre-employment, so there's the application, online application, and then there's supporting documents, which is the resume, the 3 letters of references, their credentials, transcripts, anything and everything that's going to help build that online pre-employment application that you're calling. Because the more you offer, and whenever I have the opportunity to speak to prospective candidates, I explain to them, the more you provide up front, the easier and the more you set the bar higher, you get yourself from here up to here. And it just makes it that much quicker and easier for us on both ends. Any other questions?
So you mentioned that some other districts are now trying to catch up to our recruitment standards.
Oh, yeah.
I just be curious to see, you said that they're making some recruitment videos. Are they on YouTube? Like, how are they?
Yes, they're on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we can share some of those with the board just to see.
Yeah.
What if the board made a video? Can we do that?
I think it would be a great idea.
Have you heard that?
We're camera ready.
Brenda, you heard that? We will be calling you.
It would be great, and it would be something that we could add to our website.
All 9 members.
That would be amazing.
I do want to share, although the question was not asked, but just know that we went from 0 to 1 applicant per week. With all of this campaign, we went up to 38 applicants a day.
Wow.
A day?
A day.
Wow.
So nobody has an excuse that there's no one applying or that no one's looking. The focus is definitely on Norwalk. People are talking about Norwalk. We're the talk of the town. We're the talk of the state. So I sit here in front of you very proud, and from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for the support. I want to thank the superintendent and our administration because they have been front and center and very supportive in all this. I couldn't have done it without all of your support. So by all means, we thank you.
And I think also in connection to what Lisette is saying, one of the things that Hamilton's team and Lisa Colon's team have been doing is having joint meetings to address some of the things that were articulated in the findings in terms of making sure that there's a seamless process between applying or posting and the whole symmetry of what needs to happen within HR and finance. So I know they've been actively already engaging in joint conversations to address some of the recommendations from the HR review.
Anything else? Anything else I can answer for you right now?
Just thank you. Thank you for leading that charge.
Does anyone that's online, any of the members have any additional questions?
Can I just add in, I did see, let's set the billboard and I was like, wow, that looks fantastic. So I was like driving saying, oh my gosh, I didn't get a heads up. I didn't know it was there. And I thought, oh my goodness. So it really stands out. And I think this advertising, obviously going, I think you said from 1 to 3 to 30 applicants a day. Is that correct? So that's huge. I think the advertising is a success. So thank you so much for spearheading that.
Sure. Thank you. Okay.
I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Really, really good work session. I think we're doing some important work in HR, and we have some important priorities to help us get even better. So I think it's a very good place to be in. I want to thank everyone at Prismatic. I want to thank Lizette Colon and her team, the superintendent, for helping to lead all of this. We did not receive, the next item on the agenda is public comments. We did not receive any comments via email. I don't know if there's anybody here who wants to comment. Yeah. Okay.
And it looks like, Mary, hang on 1 second.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. This is Mary Jordan, 9 Mott Avenue, president of the Norwalk Federation of Teachers. What a lot of important information. I thank the board for their work all year. I just have some comments that I jotted down as topics came up. I hope you'll forgive my lack of a comprehensive, polished 3-paragraph agenda, essay. On the topic of higher salaries, it is true that when you look at our salary schedule, we have some of the top salaries around. However, for example, our doctoral candidates are on a salary with 33 steps. it is almost impossible to be on step 33 with the various adjustments that we've made over time. Very few have so many years to a top salary in other districts. So although we have some of the top salaries in the state, very few are able to be paid those salaries. I have many requests from HR to give adjustments due to people having to take a pay cut to come to Norwalk. This is after we've eliminated the 10-year limit. So I would be cautious to say that we have some of the highest salaries. Another recommendation had to do with the team program and educating principals on the team program. It is important that everybody involved are educated about the team mentor new teacher orientation program. However, principals are not the movers and shakers of the team orientation program. It's a program that is supposed to operate in the safety zone beyond evaluators, beyond supervisors, with a kind of peer mentor space. So I would be very eager to make sure that we maintain that space. In terms of personnel records, the reason we hold on to personnel records for a long time in Connecticut is, among other reasons, to serve the needs of teachers who are trying to buy back time. We have currently, even now, employees from the 90s who would benefit from good personnel records who are not able to document early service in Norwalk. So for example, when I am trying to retire, I could buy a year back of long-term substitute certified service. But if the records aren't there, I can be very hindered in that. It's kind of arcane, but it has a big impact on people. There was a lot of discussion about the speed of offers to candidates. It's a great goal. It is impacted by many changes in positions that are occurring. And it's also, although we do have a program to reward early notification of a retirement, the position is often posted very late due to the long budget process. So to the extent that we can settle school-based budgets earlier, we can post positions earlier. Ms. Keys, I appreciate your question about the response to unsuccessful candidates. A courteous, timely, responsible response is important, and historically has not happened at the school level across the district. So to the extent that we can continue that is important. Exit interviews are a great idea, fully support. I think there's a lot of information to be coming from those. A diversified workforce flows right into the concern about exit interviews. And hiring committees should be diverse. There is a big need for policies and process about hiring committees, that they should just be whoever is available period 3 on a Tuesday, that they should be very carefully constructed. They are not always diverse. And we really need to commit to retain individuals who have not only a diverse background, but a diverse set of opinions, attitudes, experiences, and reactions that all fall within a range of professionalism and the definition of professionalism. We are losing people of color at a higher rate than we lose white individuals. I was fairly heartbroken to have a conversation with a teacher as she submitted her resignation, who said, "I think I am just too Black to be a Norwalk teacher. I think we can do better. I'm happy to hear the commitment from this board and from all the individuals associated with Norwalk Public Schools to do better." I'm almost done. I really hope that there will be some some attention provided to the program called Educators Rising. It's a kind of like a pathway to steer local Norwalk students towards a teaching profession. It's a Connecticut initiative. It's a national kind of an organization, and it's a good one. Many districts participate and find that it has a good impact for teacher recruitment. In terms of special education teachers in Connecticut, according to the State Department of Education numbers, there were almost 2,000 special education teachers who were not employed. And we have less of a shortage than a shortage of people willing to continue. So I think the more we continue to overwork and overwhelm our special educators, the more we will continue to have the problem that many districts have to recruit special educators. These are highly litigious positions sometimes in those environments with much more pressure than others. In terms of the website, there is no union contract online for NFT. I'm very much hoping to settle the contract that was to have begun in September of 2020 and get that posted online for the benefit of everyone involved. I think that's the end of my scattershot comments, and I appreciate your patience with that.
Thank you, Mary.
Anybody else like to raise their hand?
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda tonight. I want to again thank everyone for their participation, great information, lots to work from, and we're excited for it. So if anybody wants to make a motion to adjourn, that'd be a good time. Thanks, Godfrey, seconded by Mike. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, I see Cheryl. Thanks, Cheryl.
And I